Hi everybody, Ann Wendel here for Girls Gone Strong. Today I'm going to be doing a couple of videos for you on hip mobility drills, and I'm also going to link to an article that I wrote a couple months ago that talks about why your hip flexor tightness might not be tightness, what you might need to do as far as strengthening your glutes and some exercises for that. Just so that you can kind of figure out what's going on. Do you need hip mobility or do you need more hip musculature strength and stability? So we're going to talk a little bit about a couple different exercises. The first one here, and the funny thing is, for me doing this on hip mobility, I probably don't have very good hip mobility compared to a lot of you. And it's something that I've had to work on over the years, but also something that I've learned and I wanted to share with you all is that sometimes we're limited not just by the soft tissue tightness, like our muscles and things like that, our connective tissue. Sometimes what we're running into with lack of flexibility, if you will, in the hips is actually the bony configuration of the hip. So when you have, let's say, just to make it simple, the ball in the socket of the hip, sometimes, everyone's going to be different. Some people's hip, their femur is angled in a different way. Sometimes it's rotated forward in the socket or backward in the socket. And so that angle and that rotation is really going to determine which way your hips like to move. So it's not always a matter of stretching muscles or tight muscles that's limiting your mobility. Sometimes it's a bony end feel that you're getting, and that's something you don't want to push into or try to force through, and you don't want to feel pain with any of these things. You want to feel a nice easy stretch. So the other thing I wanted to mention is just for some basic directional anatomy, this position that I'm sitting in right now is hip external rotation, and if I bring this leg this way, this is hip internal rotation on my left leg and external on the right leg, okay? So actually that's a good position for our first hip mobility drill, which is sometimes called the shin box or the 90-90 hip mobility drill. Basically, you're gonna be setting up with your front leg as close to 90 degrees at the hip and 90-degree bend at the knee, and the back leg in the same sort of position, 90 degrees at the knee. Now what you'll see here is, for me, that's kind of an uncomfortable position. It's kind of hard for me to get into, and so this is something that I've worked on. I'm going to turn a little bit more this way so you guys can see. Basically what you're going to do is come forward. Think about staying up nice and tall. Think about bringing your sternum or your belly button forward over the knee. Try to relax this back leg as much as you can and come forward, stretching the front hip into external rotation. You're going to feel that stretch back here in your glutes. Okay, so you're going to hang out there for just a minute. And then what you can do is rock back a little bit. So I'm bringing my weight back this way, and I'm getting a stretch into internal rotation on my back hip. Okay, now if you're very loose in external rotation, you probably won't have a problem keeping this leg down on the ground. Mine doesn't want to do that, so it's coming up, and I'm just kind of letting it because I'm hanging out, stretching back in here. Okay, so you can just kind of go forward and back into that. One thing that you can do to actually increase a little bit of the stretch or the tension is hold on to a kettlebell. You don't want to make it too heavy. Come forward, it just gives you a little bit of an assist, and that actually feels pretty good coming forward. And then bring it close to you as you come back and kind of sit back and stretch that hip back into internal rotation, my back leg, my left hip. So rocking forward and back. And you can hang out there and do that as many times as you want. When you're ready to switch, come up nice and slow. What you're gonna do is kind of pivot on this back foot. Keep this front leg in as much external rotation as you can. Get comfortable there. And you're going to start opening up the other leg into external rotation. And again, you can hang out there and do that as many times as you want. If you need some assistance, I've got my back hand on the floor. You can do that. You can post up there. Or if you've got more flexibility in the hips, you can kind of do it this way. And when you're ready, you're going to turn. Go slow because you've been hanging out in that other position for a while. Again, you're going to get into that 90-90 position. Keep in mind this side might feel different than the other side did. And you're going to come forward and you're going to sit back. And again, you can bring your kettlebell in or do whatever you want to do. If you need to take some of the strain off, you can post up on that backhand and lean back. You can put a little towel under your hip if it feels more comfortable to have something holding your buttocks and your hip up. Again, you don't want to feel any pain in your hip, but you don't want to feel pain in your knee either. And what I see in a lot of my patients is they're limited in their hip mobility, and they try to get that extra mobility by cranking on the knee. I've seen a lot of people with knee meniscus cartilage injuries from yoga and things like that where they're forcing into a pose. So you don't ever want to force into it. Keep that front leg, again, as close to 90-90 as you can, and keep the stretch in the hip. There you go.